Hello, TV. We've got some catching up to do.
After a long 5-month hiatus, Steven Universe finally returned to TV with its third season. Throughout 2 events, it aired all of its 25 episodes in under 3 months, and now I'm finally going to talk about it. Yeah, I know I'm a little late to the party, but there were a lot of new shows and special reviews that I wanted to do before I got to this. Plus, because these episodes aired so quickly, I think it's kind of good for me to have had some time to rest before returning to Beach City. The first 2 seasons were amazing in my book, so let's see if the 3rd season of Steven Universe is a worthy follow-up. We start with the highly anticipated season premiere, Super Watermelon Island and Gem Drill. 2 episodes that wrap up 2 long-running plot threads of Malachite and the Cluster. Let's get this out of the way first. The biggest problem with these episodes are their runtime. Subplots that were built up for dozens of episodes are resolved in 11 minutes each, and it causes things to feel disappointing or underwhelming. This problem really hurts Gem Drill. I find it to be a good episode, but it could have been so much better. It finally shows us the Cluster in a visually interesting way, and we get to see how much Peridot has grown recently, as her and Steven tunnel down into the Earth, which ties together the Peridemption and Cluster arcs really nicely. I understand what they were going for with Steven neutralizing the Cluster by teaching it to communicate with itself, but it just felt a little too easy. Steven just talks to it for a few minutes, and after all that he went through, we aren't even 100% sure that the Earth will be safe while the Cluster is bubbled. Other episodes have shown that being bubbled completely freezes a gem from reforming or continuing a thought.
You need me. I'm the only one who knows about them. The Cluster, you insufferable half-formed traitor megaclods!
Additionally, the threat of the
Cluster
seemed to be downplayed even though it finally makes an appearance. Despite other episodes making it clear that this thing can do some serious damage to the Earth, we don't really see it do that outside of a few small earthquakes. Yeah, I know that Steven and Peridot probably stopped it before it could really destroy the Earth, but it kinda brings the scale of the episode down a few notches. I enjoyed Gem Drill on its own merits, but after having so many episodes devoted to hyping up I feel kind of disappointed to know that it ended with Steven talking to it, and that this arc may not actually be over. If shows up again sometime in the show's future, then maybe I'll feel a little better about this conclusion, but for now, that bogs down the episode for me. Now let's talk about Gem Drill's sister episode, Super Watermelon Island, which is not that good. There were a lot of cool ideas here, but they felt very lazily put together, as if the writers wanted to get this plot over with as soon as possible. The gems leaving Steven behind kinda made sense, considering how dangerous Malachite has been shown to be. But when you consider how many times Steven has helped the gems defeat a threat that they could not handle, this decision seems stupid and only makes things convenient for the next episode. Speaking of stupid setups, after Malachite is defeated, why didn't the gems just poof Jasper? They just let her die so that she can conveniently show up later in the season and almost kill Amethyst. It's all good. The fight between the fusions was amazing and had a lot of great parts to it, but I didn't like its conclusion. Malachite loses the battle because she gets distracted by the Watermelon Stevens, and this seems to be the only reason why they return. Hooray, more convenience! I enjoyed the nice bits of comedy provided by the Watermelon Stevens and their new village, but they probably would have had a much better and better paced reintroduction if they weren't dumped into the middle of this mess. To make things better, Steven gets a new power in this episode, where he can just possess random things and people. I mean, I'm glad it's brought up again later in the season, but it doesn't really have much of an explanation. It just kinda shows up, like a lot of things in this episode. But of all the stupid things in this stupid episode, the stupidest thing is where it takes place. One interesting detail about the Malachite story arc is how despite Garnet searching almost the entire ocean, she couldn't find Lapis and Jasper. But it turns out that they were on this island established to have rogue gems on it all along. Yeah, why wasn't this the first place you searched? Oh, I know why. Because it's Super Watermelon Island, where logic goes to die. Despite my anger, Super Watermelon Island still has a few redeeming qualities, as the fight is stunning and there are some great jokes.
You're a real anarchist.
No one can tell me what to do.
but there are just too many plot conveniences and missed opportunities for me to overlook, and those things make this episode a pretty big disappointment. The good thing is that this is the worst the season gets in my opinion, and even this isn't too bad. The rest of the In Too Deep event is really good. Same Old World is a fun and thoughtful episode with some great visuals and development for Lapis, as well as the world in general. And Barnmates is a fun Peridot episode with some sweet moments. But the standout of these last trio of episodes is Hit the Diamond. For what it was, I really enjoyed this episode. Ruby and Sapphire were sweet and unfused, and a lot of gags hit bullseye for me. However, a part of me feels a little disappointed at how the premise of this episode was handled. This could be any Steven Universe fanfic writer's dream. A group of homeworld gems land on Earth, and all of the gems have to come together to fight them. It could have been a really cool episode, but instead everybody just plays baseball. Kind of a familiar premise, ain't it? I can forgive the direction this episode took for a few reasons. One, we just had two big climactic episodes back to back, and things might have gotten a little stale if this episode took the same route. Two, we got the episode I sort of wanted in the form of Back to the Moon. And three, even though the Crooniverse completely screwed with our expectations by putting the word diamond in the episode title, they still managed to pull off a home run of an episode. Every episode that I've talked about up to this point makes up the In Too Deep event. This was advertised as a dark and exciting set of episodes that would reveal what we really are. The commercial was definitely intriguing, but also a big lie.
Steven, are you telling lies?
The ad fit the tone of the first two episodes, but I wasn't expecting an episode where the gems play baseball to come out of this supposedly dark event. I don't fault the show for being poorly advertised, I just wanted to mention this, but I do blame it for a disappointing premiere. Blame Cartoon Network all you want for their advertising and poor airing schedule. They're not the ones who built up the Malachite and Cluster arcs as these huge things before resolving them both in 22 minutes. Another thing that I took note of during this event was that there were a lot of off-model character animations. I don't know if it was intentional at points, but it was definitely distracting, especially considering that the animation was at its best in some of the episodes. Luckily, it did get a bit better as the season continued, and it's nowhere as bad as Pearl over here. Overall, In Too Deep was an alright event, and I was glad to go back to a weekly episode schedule for a bit. But then we got the Summer of Steven. 4 straight weeks of new episodes on weekdays, which finished out Season 3 and started 4. Was it excessive? You bet. But was it satisfying? Totally. Because I avoided all of the leaks this season, the Summer of Steven began with the episodes Steven Floats and Drop Beat Dad. They serve as the perfect transition between the two parts of the season, both literally and in quality too. Steven Floats seems like another Steven Gets New Power episode on the surface, but it turned out to be a pretty funny and clever episode that is basically the SpongeBob episode Waiting done right. Since the characters are waiting for something, but things are actually happening. Drop Beat Dad, on the other hand, is a really simple and predictable deadbeat dad story. I really wish I could say more about it, but it's just that simple. I mean, I'm glad that it brought back Marty and it had a few good jokes, but I just didn't find it to be all that noteworthy. It sadly continues a precedent for this season, set by Super Watermelon Island, for episodes that have good ideas behind them, but are kind of squandered by elements that were lazily done. The new Lars and Beach City Drift are good examples of this. Lars and Stevani make major appearances for the first time since Season 1, but they leave much to be desired. The new Lars is a fun episode, but there really wasn't much point to it besides learning that Lars actually does like Sadie, something that you probably already figured out from episodes like Hard Club. Also, Beach City Drift had some good visuals, but the conflict is resolved by rolling up a car window. This was Stevani's return episode. Enough said. Among these not-so-great episodes was Mr. Greg, an 11-minute musical that is a contender for the best episode of the series. Its music was great, its setting was unique, its pacing was tight, and it resolved a conflict between Pearl and Greg perfectly. There's hardly anything in this episode to complain about, although it is rather lazy that the character designers just copy and pasted the same design for the waiters. But that's just a nitpick towards an otherwise amazing episode. It's just kind of a shame that most of the first half of the Summer of Steven was occupied by episodes that were just good instead of amazing. Although Restaurant Wars was so over the top and cheesy I loved it. But anyway, a lot of episodes in the first half of this event were a little better than these, but just short of being great. Too Short to Ride was fun and funny, but its resolution with Peridot obtaining metal powers didn't make complete sense to me. Kiki's delivery service gave us some development for a character that had none, but I found the plot to be a little boring and I knew where it was going the second it started. Monster Reunion was a sweet, but fast and somewhat underwhelming sequel episode. I enjoyed it for its world building, but it seemed to just wrap up as soon as possible. This episode did help me see a pattern that was forming in the season. Season 3 is reminding me a lot of Season 1, specifically its second half, or Season 1B. Not only were there sequels to episodes from Season 1, but there was also a focus on giving secondary characters the spotlight before culminating in a big story arc finale. The difference when comparing these two seasons is that Season 3 just isn't as interesting to me. In Season 1B, it seemed like every episode had some cool new idea that made me want to keep watching. With Season 3, a lot of the episodes just kind of exist. I don't hate any of them, but there really isn't much to them that makes me want to come back. There was a lot of variety in Season 1B. One episode had Steven creating watermelon clones of himself, and a few episodes later, there were hints of an upcoming alien invasion. But that variety isn't really present in Season 3, as there's a lot of standalone side character episodes, and a lot of them were produced back-to-back too, which makes watching a part of the season such a slog to get through. I see what it was going for, but due to a lack of variety and overall interest, most of Season 3 is inferior to what it was trying to succeed. And that ends part 1 of this 2-part video. Don't worry, part 2 will be my next video. It's not gonna take 6 months for it to come out. The reason I decided to split this review up is because it seems like December is going to be a really busy month for me, and I didn't want everyone to wait till Christmas for a 25-minute video. It might be shorter than 25 minutes though, don't get your hopes up. Expect part 2 to come out within a week or so, although whenever I say that, I end up getting the video out before then, but again, no promises. I also might have a channel update out in the meantime, so you can maybe look forward to that too. But before you go, make sure to click on the eye in the corner of the video to vote on what review or countdown you would like to see me do next. I'm Nintendo, and thank you for watching. Play me out, Rebecca!
I think you're so good, and I'm nothing like you. Look at you go, I just adore you. I wish that I knew what makes you think I'm so special.